Hi everybody. Today I want to talk about balancing melodic elements with non-melodic elements in sound design focused music. For those of you who are not familiar with my music or my channel, I make a style of music that my friends and I call hyper glitch, which is very sound design oriented. So that's kind of what this tutorial is based around. However, if you make more melodic music that's maybe not necessarily so sound design focused, but you want to incorporate more sound design focused elements into your music, I think this tutorial will be useful for you as well. And you'll just have to kind of modify some of the things I talk about to suit your artistic palette a bit better. But nevertheless, let's get into it. So a viewer of mine actually requested this topic because he was struggling a bit with it, and I think it's a really good topic to talk about. So that's why we're doing it. The idea is that when you have a song that is primarily focused on texture and rhythm, which like my music is, it can be difficult to incorporate a melody in there in a way that sounds cohesive, but also doesn't fight for space. So I'm going to show 3 different methods for balancing melodic elements with sound design focused elements, which I will just call glitches from here on out because these are all just different glitchy noises, and I don't want to say a bunch of words. So to start it off, here is a loop where it's just sound design focused elements, no melodic content, and this is what it sounds like. Whoops. And so we have that there for reference. We'll be looking at that and comparing it to some of these other things as we go on. But before we go on, I do want to say that all these sounds that I have in this tutorial, with the exception of the ones that I'm synthesizing from scratch, can be found in the Glitch with Friends Volume 2 sample pack, which I worked on with my friends. That's why it's called Glitch with Friends. And it's free download. It's like 3 gigabytes of a bunch of really good sound design, mostly glitches, bass, but a bunch of other stuff too. You can find it in the description. But anyway, so on to the first method. So before I talk about it, let me just play it for you, and then we'll go into it. So as you can hear in the background, we have an ARP playing, and I guess you can call it an ARP. I don't know if this fully qualifies as one, but the important thing that I want to note of it is that it's kind of always playing. There's not a part where it plays a little and then stops and then starts up again. No, it's going through the whole thing. Like it's always on. And so when you have a melodic I guess sequence like that, it can be sometimes difficult to squeeze in glitch noises, and you feel like you have to kind of fit them around each other. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what you want the focus of your music to be, or for that particular song, or even just that particular section. So if we go back to the plain old glitch loop, you'll notice that the mid-range is pretty well occupied by the glitches, and they're kind of a bit more full spectrum, whereas on this I selected glitch noises that are a bit more not, I guess, mid-heavy. So let's just isolate the drums and the sounds. So some of them do have some good mid presence, but most of them are pretty high-end focused, and that's because the saw ARP here that we have is mostly occupying the mid-range. It's not really here. In fact, if we pull up a EQ here on the master, that's where it all lives. However, if we take away the drums and the ARP and then we just listen to the glitches, so, I mean, there's stuff going on here too, and some judicious EQing and otherwise mixing can handle those space conflicts. However, most of the stuff is going on above it, and because this is so in the forefront, you don't want anything really fighting it, and it's going to be the main focus. In my opinion, when there's melodic content in music, even if it's really sound design focused music like this, your ear is going to really kind of latch onto it if you can like clearly distinguish the notes from each other. And so if you have a kind of melodic arp like this going, and if you make it well defined like it currently is, but have it be quiet, then your ear is still going to latch onto it. But because it's really quiet, it's gonna sound a little uninteresting in my opinion. And so let's so let's take a listen to that. So if we take the pluck arp and just bring the volume way down. So of course now the glitches are more in the forefront. However, because this is a lot quieter, it just kind of doesn't sound good in my opinion. It's not, your ear isn't quite sure what to focus on because you want to latch onto the melodic content, but it's too quiet and it's too hidden. It's not prominent. So what you can do though is if you pick a different wave type, and such as like a sine wave that's a lot more low profile, and then you occlude the melodic structure by amping up the reverb and delay, and turn it almost more into like kind of a pad in a way, you can get a lot more room for the other elements, the non-melodic elements, and it's not like they're not fighting each other for attention so much. So let's do that. So this oscillator, we're just gonna turn it down into a sine wave. And I have it going through a filter with some distortion, so there will be some overtones, but that's not a huge deal. And let's just give it a bit of like an attack, so it's not so plucky. It's more of just kind of like a woo. And then let's amp up the reverb a bit, turn down the dry. And so here, let's listen to that again with the volume at like a decent level. So that's better for this in the sense that your ear isn't as drawn to the arp, in my opinion, at least because it's less defined, and so it's easier to let it kind of fade into the background of the listener's attention. However, these particular glitches I picked these with the original saw arp in mind, so it almost sounds like the glitches aren't taking up enough of the space that this original arp, or that this new arp has now left. So if we take this and just drag it over to our original loop here, which has more kind of mid-heavy content, let's take a listen. So this can sit in the background and kind of provide some just background ambiance without distracting too much from all the stuff going on in the more mid-heavy kind of sound design focus sections. And that's good. You want that because now the focus is more on the rhythmic textural stuff, which if that's what you're going for, then that's a great way to achieve that. So that's the first kind of method and the first kind of consideration. All right, so let's talk about the second method that we're going to go into. So I'm just going to play it and then we'll discuss it. If you haven't noticed yet, I'm using the same drum pattern for all of these, so that the only difference is the balance between the melodic and non-melodic content in our analysis. But yeah, onto the analysis. The type of synth I have here is a quasi acid 303 inspired deal. I'm just using Serum. I'm using a square wave that's going through a resonant filter, which has an envelope attached to it, and I'm doing a bit of FM with a triangle wave at the same octave as the core oscillator. I have two macros, one for to change the cutoff bass value, and then another one for the FM. And so these are being modulated here. So that's how the synth is. Oh yeah, and then there's also, I'm running it through some regular old saturation, pretty fat tube distortion, and then just a bit of reverb, the ye old tried and true. And so the sound design elements that I have here, all the glitches, so all the stuff that's playing at the same time as the synth, it's sort of like when I had the sawtooth kind of arp here, it's stuff that's not going to be fighting it in the frequency spectrum, it's mostly higher end stuff, like for example this little glitch here, and then just like this one up here, same glitch actually. It's like higher pitch stuff, but then the stuff that I have playing in between the notes is more so has more mid presence or a bit more like movement, and it can draw focus to itself. And the idea here is not to like have to pick either the melody or either the glitches and make one of them the focus while the other one takes a back seat, like in the previous example. In here, we want them both to be kind of at the forefront, and they kind of hop around back and forth. Other artists or other, I guess, tutorial makers have talked about the concept of vertical versus horizontal complexity. I thought I came up with that idea myself until I saw someone else talking about it, and I was like, damn, I'm not the first. But the idea is that when you have a track, you can have two axes of complexity. Vertical complexity is when you have different things stacked on top of each other playing at the same time, and you have to get them to mesh with each other playing simultaneously, and usually that is achieved by having some kind of spectral balance, so like filtering and EQ and stuff to make sure each one can be heard appropriately, but also not be overly cramming each other, trying to fight for attention. And horizontal complexity is when you have over the time axis, not I guess like a spectral axis. So you can have a bunch of different sounds that are maybe you only have like one or two playing at one time. However, they quickly switch to other sounds in rapid succession. If you listen to my music, you know that I very much do the latter more so than the former. That's just kind of how I do it. That's the style. That's how glitch kind of is. But both are very valid approaches based on whatever you're doing. So for this one, this is more so relying on horizontal complexity, whereas the prior one was an exercise in managing vertical complexity. So for this, like I said, whenever I have the MIDI for the synth playing, I don't have a whole lot going on with the glitches and vice versa. So let's take another listen again and listen closely to see kind of how they're not fighting each other so much. They do fight each other a little bit right here at this portion, but in my opinion, it doesn't sound that bad just because the glitches I happen to pick don't, in my opinion, conflict too much with these two notes here, but it's a matter of taste. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of doing things this way. I used to do this a lot, but it's really labor intensive, and it's kind of a pain maybe it's easier in other DAWs, but in FL Studio, having to constantly open and close the piano roll and move notes around and remember where everything is and then try and juggle all these audio clips around, I'm not a big fan of it, but you can get good results with it. I mean, I have plenty of songs where I'm doing exactly this, and so that's another method. Okay, so let's talk about the third method, and this method is my favorite, and I think is the most in tune with the spirit of my YouTube channel in terms of how I personally like to approach things. So let's take a quick listen. So the idea here is that you take a normal melodic sequence, and then you glitch the shit out of it, and then you render it into audio, and then you bring it back in, and you can arrange everything as if everything were glitches, kind of like sound design elements to be arranged as clips like this, rather than having to program in MIDI that you change over time. The obvious limitation is that you kind of have to, commit to something, and if you don't like it, then you're gonna have to kind of start the whole process over. But that's kind of how glitch as a genre works, at least in terms of how I do it and a lot of my friends do it. So before I talk a bit more about it in this context, let's take a look at how I generated these melodic sounding glitches. So if we go to my sound design tab. So again, from the Glitch with Friends Volume 2 pack, we have this melodic loop that I made. So this is one I personally made. Let me turn off the effects so that you can hear what it sounds like. So take a listen. So if you're wondering, that actually came from my mutable instruments rings on my Eurorack modular synth. So it sounds like almost like a real guitar, but it's actually a physical modeling algorithm. But anyways, that's not what's important here. What's important is that this is a regular melody. It doesn't have any glitching. There's no like crazy sound design. It's just pretty. So if you've seen my previous video on leveraging Maximus curves to get glitches by doing just weird compression, that's what I'm doing here. That's what this automation is. So I'm going to turn the effects back on, and this is how it ends up sounding. Yeah, those reverb tails can be really something. But yeah, I'll put a link to how to make this kind of thing in the description. And so I rendered that out, and I made this clip, which is same thing as this, but rendered, and I call it Melody 1. And then I dropped it into a granular synth. I've done this like so many times in so many of my videos, and then I just modulated the 4 main parameters, and then rendered it out again, and then I got this sound. So normally when I do a lot of glitching, like glitch type sound design, I try and make whatever I'm making sound really unrecognizable compared to the source material. However, the idea here is that you want to have your melodic content still be recognizable after you do some modification to it. And so, and even like I didn't do any crazy granular like stuff here. It sounds different, but it's not like super mangled like I normally do. And that's because we want to still use this as like melody. And so we have these two, and let's go back to our arrangement. And so I'm just chopping these two up and placing them in sequence, or like in a pattern here. And then so I have another video on how to arrange glitch sounds musically, where if you've seen it before, basically I just have a bunch of audio, kind of like the stuff here on the bottom row, these ones here, and I am just arranging them around in a way to get like cool rhythms and stuff. And that's kind of what you're going to do with this. You're going to treat this that same way, except it's going to sound melodic still. So let's take away the glitches. And so the idea is that you not only modify the audio to get it to sound more destructed or destroyed, but by arranging it like this way, also you can get you get that less like cohesive sound. You get that more kind of glitchy, destroyed sort of like start and stop. It doesn't sound. It's glitch music is what it is. So by not only modifying the sound but also chopping it up and rearranging it, that's how you can achieve that. And then throwing in these other elements. We are balancing a little, like making sure we have a bit of both horizontal and vertical complexity here. Here we see that like when these are playing, I don't have any of this melody playing, same here and here. But then this higher pitched one, I feel safe putting over the melody because they're not going to interfere too much. Then here at the end, these do kind of interfere. But at the end of a bar, sometimes it's kind of cool to have like some kind of big sound before the next bar starts. So that's what I'm doing there. If you are making more melodic music that's kind of less sound design oriented, but you still want to have that kind of glitchy kind of feel going on, you can. So this melody one, whoops, no, crud. Phew, okay. Always be careful with that. You don't have that enabled. So let's just, so this is basically like the slightly I guess like the maximized version of the original melody. So let's just see how it sounds with nothing else besides the drums. So pretty cool. I mean, these drums are designed with, at least this drum pattern, I designed it with, stuttery, glitchy type stuff in mind, so it's really syncopated. But if you had just kind of like a bit more of like a normal drum pattern, this would sound really cool. Like, and this would be more kind of like melodic sounding music. What you could even do is take this melody and then make it quieter and like high pass it, and then maybe like pitch it up a little, like yeah, pitch it up an octave, and then put like the completely unmodified one under it, and then so you have like a normal melody playing, and then as well as like kind of a more screwed up version playing on top of it. So actually, you know what? Let's try that. I didn't prepare that ahead of time, but I'm feeling risky, so let's give that a shot. So okay, we actually got to mix that. So oops, that's not what I wanted. So let's just pitch that up an octave. Let's high pass that a bit. Do I want to have that pitched up? Let's try not pitching it up. Okay, and then let's give it like, let's just compress the bejesus out of it to. So there you go. So then, and then actually let's just make a new drum pattern and just do a. Let's do. There we go. So this isn't even really like, this sounds more like standard electronic non-glitchy music, but you can add a lot of texture to melodic content by doing what I just did here, by you know, absolutely destroying something and then kind of layering it on top in a more subdued fashion. You can do that with drums too, but this ends up, I'm going in a whole different direction with this. That's a big tangent I just went on. But to summarize, you know, this is what we're doing here. We are balancing melodic content with glitchy sound design content, and the three methods for doing that are having kind of like an ARP that you either put in the foreground or in the background, and then you design the sound of the ARP accordingly, and that's more kind of a vertical complexity type deal. The other idea is horizontal complexity, where you have you kind of alternate between having your forefront melodic sound playing and then your forefront glitchy sound design sounds playing, and they kind of hop back and forth in a pattern that's like rhythmically pleasing with the drums. And then the other idea is to just mangle the crap out of your melodic content and then treat it like audio glitches and then arrange them as such. So some examples I think that you should listen to for this method I just did here. A good the album Crying Over Prose for No Reason by Edit. He's 1/3 of the Glitch Mob, and before he was in the Glitch Mob, he made music that was actually glitchy. I don't think Glitch Mob is that glitchy compared to anywhere remotely as glitchy as Edit's like earlier stuff. So the album Crying Over Prose for No Reason, and he had another album too. What was it called? It was like, oh yeah, Certified Air Raid Material or something like that. The former more so than the latter is, but both of them are quite glitchy in the sense that I don't know how exactly he did it, but in Crying Over Prose for No Reason, he has like a guitar, he has a lot of guitar in there, and it sounds like he just recorded some regular old guitar and then like destroyed it and then like layered it back in with a bunch of other stuff. I presume that's what he's doing, that's what it sounds like to me, but it's a good case study of how to accomplish melodic glitch music that feels veritably glitchy. An example of how to do this first style is, I mean, if you're watching my channel and you don't know who Wilg is, then you're missing out. A lot of his music does this really well. A couple of the tracks on the Tiny Moon album do that. Sedna Win is a good example. The Dragged EP has, I think it's Sacrifice. That song has like good kind of melodies and stuff playing that don't distract too much from all the glitches, or you're able to kind of focus on both of them at the same time. He's really good. I mean, if you don't know who Wolf is, go check him out, because he's like 4,000 times better than I am. So Off the top of my head, I can't think of a great example of someone doing like maybe this sort of style, but I mean, if you ever listen to like, like kind of more mainstream like bro step kind of dubstep type stuff, especially stuff from like 2000 like 13 or whatever, back when the quote unquote glitch hop was really popular. Um, this hocketing is when you have like different instruments rapidly alternating between each other in terms of like who's playing, who's the prominent voice. Hocketing was really big in music from around that time, like mainstream bass music, and so they're doing less glitches and more like kind of dubstep wobs and big zoomps and stuff like that. And they have oftentimes a lot of that kind of interspersed between like little melodic kind of like jingles like doo 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 and then like blah blah doo 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 blah 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 blah. I hope you get what I'm getting at here. I mean, hell, Skrillex does that quite a bit. Like, you listen to like Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites. That's like a perfect example of this kind of approach. So, yeah, I hope this is informative for you. There will be links to everything I talked about, from sample packs to other tutorials of mine to reference songs in the description. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. And if you ever have any recommendations for topics you'd like me to cover in the future, also please let me know. This topic was recommended to me by someone, and I'm happy to do more recommendations as well. Thank you, and have a good day.